The courier arrived instead of my son on Christmas morning, delivering a rejection letter that shattered 45 years of fatherhood in a single paragraph. But that was just the beginning. Within weeks, Daniel and his wife were filing legal papers to have me declared mentally incompetent, claiming I was too senile to manage my own life. They wanted control of everything: my house, my money, my freedom. The only problem? My late wife Eleanor had anticipated their greed and built legal protections they never saw coming. Before continuing the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. Christmas morning arrived with the kind of crisp Oregon air that Eleanor always said made everything feel possible. I stood in the kitchen of our Victorian home in Salem, watching the early light filter through the lace curtains she'd hung 30 years ago. The house felt too quiet without her humming, but today was different. Today, Daniel, my son, and Sophia, my daughter-in-law, were coming home. I'd been preparing since dawn, following Eleanor's handwritten recipes like sacred text. The 20-pound turkey sat golden in the oven, its skin crackling with herb butter. Her famous cranberry sauce cooled by the window, the tartness balanced with just enough orange zest. The scent of sage and rosemary filled every corner of the house. This was our first Christmas without Eleanor. She'd passed 4 months ago, leaving me alone in rooms that still echoed with her laughter. But I wasn't going to let grief ruin what had always been our most sacred day. I set out the good china, the spode pattern we'd received as a wedding gift. Each plate held memories of Christmas mornings when Daniel was small, tearing through wrapping paper while Eleanor and I watched our world revolve around his joy. The dining room glowed under the crystal chandelier. I'd polished the mahogany table until it reflected the candlelight. Eleanor's silver serving pieces caught the light, each one placed exactly where she would have positioned it. The napkins were folded into her signature fans, a skill she'd tried unsuccessfully to teach me for 43 years. I checked my watch. 2 o'clock. They'd promised to arrive by 3. Daniel had sounded distant on the phone last week when we'd made the plans, but I'd attributed that to his busy corporate law practice. Sophia had her own pressures as a financial advisor, managing client portfolios during the volatile holiday season. The apple pie sat cooling on the counter, its lattice crust golden brown and perfect. Eleanor had always insisted on making 2 pies, claiming Daniel could eat half of one by himself. This year, I'd made only 1, but I'd put extra care into every detail. I walked through the living room, adjusting cushions that didn't need adjusting. The Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with ornaments collected over decades. The ceramic angel Daniel had made in 3rd grade, slightly lopsided but treasured. The glass snowflake from our Colorado honeymoon. The wooden star Eleanor had carved the year money was tight, but love was abundant. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly as Eleanor would have wanted it. The doorbell rang at 3:15, and my heart lifted. They were here. Finally, the house would be filled with voices again, with the warmth of family gathered around our table. I smoothed my blue sweater, the one Eleanor had always said brought out my eyes, and walked to the front door with a smile that felt rusty from disuse. But when I opened the door, instead of Daniel's familiar face, I found a young man in a courier uniform, holding an envelope with my name written in careful script. "Delivery for William Carter," the young courier said, his breath forming small clouds in the December air. He looked barely 25, probably working through the holidays for extra money. The kind of job Daniel had never needed, thanks to the education Eleanor and I had provided. I signed with trembling hands and closed the door. The envelope felt expensive, cream-colored with my name in formal script. But when I looked closer, I recognized the handwriting. Daniel's. My son had written this himself. I opened it slowly, like approaching a wound I wasn't ready to examine. The note was brief, written on his law firm's letterhead. Professional, cold. Dad, Sophia, and I have decided to spend Christmas with her parents in Portland this year. It makes more sense with our schedules and commitments. I'm sure you understand. We'll catch up soon. Daniel. That was it. No dear Dad. No Merry Christmas. No apology for the last-minute notice or acknowledgement of the dinner I'd been preparing since dawn. Just a cold, business-like dismissal delivered by a stranger, as if I were a client receiving notice that my case had been dropped. The formality cut deeper than any harsh words could have. This wasn't anger or frustration. This was indifference. My own son had reduced me to a business correspondence, something to be handled efficiently and set aside. I read it 3 times, searching for warmth, for some hint of the boy who used to climb into my lap during Christmas morning, who used to help Eleanor set the table with such serious concentration. But there was nothing. Just efficient words from a successful attorney who happened to share my last name. The perfect dinner suddenly felt like a monument to my foolishness. The turkey would be dry by the time I could bear to carve it. The cranberry sauce would sit untouched. The carefully folded napkins looked like white flags of surrender. I walked back to the dining room and stood at the head of the table, looking at 3 place settings arranged with such hope. The empty chairs stared back at me, silent witnesses to my miscalculation. How long had he been planning this? How long had I been deluding myself that I still mattered to him? Eleanor would have seen this coming. She'd always been more perceptive about people. In her final months, she'd grown quiet whenever Daniel's name came up, offering only sad smiles when I'd talk about his visits. I'd assumed it was her illness making everything seem distant. Now I wondered if she'd been watching our son slip away and couldn't find the words to warn me. The silence pressed against my eardrums like a physical weight. No laughter, no conversation, no clinking of silverware, just the tick of the grandfather clock, marking time that stretched endlessly ahead. Christmas dinner for one. Christmas evening alone with the ghost of the family we used to be. I folded the note and placed it on the mantel, next to Christmas cards from neighbors and Eleanor's book club friends. People who still remembered what courtesy looked like, what family obligations meant. The contrast between their warmth and Daniel's cold efficiency felt like a slap across the face. Somewhere in the distance I could hear other families gathering, other tables being filled with voices and warmth. But in Eleanor's house, there was only the echo of expectations that would never again be met. The house felt different now, not just empty, but abandoned, as if something precious had been quietly removed while I wasn't looking, leaving behind only the outline of what used to be. The dinner grew cold while I sat in Eleanor's reading chair, staring at Daniel's note until the words blurred. I needed to feel close to her, to remember what love actually looked like before it got buried under schedules and commitments. I climbed the stairs to Eleanor's study, a small room overlooking our garden that she'd claimed as her sanctuary. Her books still lined the shelves in perfect order. Her reading glasses sat folded on the desk next to a half-finished crossword puzzle, as if she'd just stepped out for tea. I opened the top drawer of her antique secretary desk, searching for something that might ease the ache in my chest. Inside were the usual things: pens, paper clips, stamps, and her leather-bound address book, filled with careful handwriting. Friends who had genuinely cared about her, who still sent me casseroles months after the funeral. But as I reached toward the back of the drawer, my fingers brushed against something unexpected. An envelope, tucked so far back it was almost hidden. My name was written on the front in Eleanor's distinctive script, but formal, deliberate. For William, if Daniel ever forgets who raised him. My hands shook as I broke the wax seal. Inside was a single sheet of her personal stationery, folded around a small brass key and legal documents. Her handwriting was shakier than usual, probably written during her final weeks. My dearest William, if you're reading this, then I was right about what I saw coming. I pray I was wrong, but your mother didn't raise a fool. Check the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. The key opens what I couldn't bring myself to tell you while I was alive. I'm sorry for the secrets, but I had to protect what we built together. All my love, Eleanor. P.S. The address is 847 Vineyard Road, Willamette Valley. Go alone. Eleanor had known. Somehow she'd seen Daniel's transformation before I had, and she'd prepared for it. But prepared what? The key was warm in my palm, brass worn smooth from use. It looked like it belonged to something substantial. A door. I walked to the filing cabinet in the corner, my heart pounding. The bottom drawer was locked, something I'd never noticed. But Eleanor's key fit perfectly, turning with a soft click. Inside were more documents, organized in Eleanor's meticulous way. Folders labeled with dates, correspondence with lawyers I'd never heard of, and photographs of a property I didn't recognize. A beautiful farmhouse surrounded by rolling hills and vineyards, restored to perfection. At the very back was another envelope, thicker than the first. Inside I found a deed with my name on it and the address Eleanor had written down. 847 Vineyard Road. A property I'd never seen, never heard of, but apparently owned. The legal documents were copies filled with terms like irrevocable trust and sole beneficiary. Eleanor hadn't just hidden a property from me. She'd created something bigger, something protected. The silence in the house felt different now. Not empty, but expectant, as if Eleanor was still here somehow, still protecting me in ways I was only beginning to understand. The woman who used to leave me notes about picking up milk had orchestrated something far more complex than I'd ever imagined. Tomorrow, I would drive to Willamette Valley. Tonight, I would try to understand how my wife had seen a future I'd been too blind to recognize. The drive to Willamette Valley took 45 minutes through winding country roads. Eleanor's key felt heavy in my pocket, a tangible reminder that my wife had lived a more complex life than I'd suspected. 847 Vineyard Road sat hidden behind oak trees. The farmhouse was beautiful, 2 stories of weathered cedar with a wraparound porch and windows that caught the afternoon light. This wasn't some abandoned property. This was a home, carefully restored and maintained. The key turned smoothly in the front door. Inside, the air smelled of cedar and lavender. The furniture was simple but elegant, chosen with Eleanor's eye for comfort. A stone fireplace dominated the living room, flanked by bookshelves filled with volumes I recognized from our collection. But the photographs on the mantel stopped me cold. Pictures of Eleanor I'd never seen before, taken in this very room. Eleanor sitting in the window seat with a book, sunlight across her face. Eleanor arranging flowers in a blue vase. Eleanor smiling at someone behind the camera, someone who wasn't me. I moved through the house like a detective. The kitchen was stocked with non-perishables, as if someone had been preparing for an extended stay. The refrigerator was empty but clean, recently unplugged. Upstairs, the master bedroom held a quilt I recognized as Eleanor's handiwork, one she'd claimed to have donated to charity. But the smaller bedroom revealed Eleanor's true purpose. The walls were lined with desks and comfortable chairs, each positioned near a window. A dozen typewriters sat ready, from vintage manual models to modern electrics. Shelves held reams of paper, reference books, and writing supplies. This wasn't just a house. It was a writer's retreat. On the central table, I found a leather portfolio, Carter Literary Foundation embossed in gold. Inside were architectural plans, contractor correspondence, and a mission statement in Eleanor's handwriting. To provide a peaceful sanctuary where writers over 50 can pursue their craft without financial pressure or family obligations. A place where stories can be born from the wisdom of experience. The documents showed Eleanor had been working on this for over 2 years, consulting with lawyers and architects. She'd funded it through her inheritance. Money I'd assumed had been spent on household expenses. At the bottom was a letter addressed to William. My darling, if you found this place, then you've discovered I've been keeping secrets. Not from malice, but from love. I saw how Daniel was changing, how he looked at our home as an asset rather than a sanctuary. I saw Sophia calculating the value of everything we'd built. This foundation is my gift to you and others like us. People who understand that retirement isn't the end of creativity, but the beginning of freedom. I've transferred most of our assets into the foundation's protection. You are the sole trustee, which means no one can touch what we've built without your permission. I'm sorry for the deception, but I had to ensure you would always have a place where you belong, where you matter. Use it well, my love. Help others find their stories. I sat in one of the writing chairs, Eleanor's letter trembling in my hands. She hadn't just protected our assets. She'd created a legacy, a purpose, a reason to keep going. The woman who'd shared my bed for 43 years had been planning for a future she wouldn't live to see, ensuring I wouldn't face it alone and defenseless. Outside, the winter sun was setting over the valley, painting the sky gold and rose. For the first time since Eleanor's death, I felt something other than grief. I felt possibility. But I also felt a chill of understanding. If Eleanor had gone to these lengths to protect our assets, she must have seen something in Daniel that I was only beginning to recognize. This wasn't just about providing for my future. This was about preparing for war. I spent the next hour exploring every corner, trying to understand the full scope of Eleanor's vision. In the kitchen, I found a guest book containing entries from writers who had apparently used the space during Eleanor's lifetime. Names I didn't recognize, with grateful messages about finding peace to write again and discovering stories I thought were lost. She'd been running this place in secret, hosting writers while I thought she was visiting her sister or attending book club meetings. The deception should have hurt, but instead I felt amazed by her dedication. In the main writing room desk, I found another envelope marked Final Instructions. Inside was a letter dated 2 weeks before Eleanor's death. her handwriting shakier but determined. "William, by now you understand what I've built here. But you need to know why. Last month, when I was in the hospital, I overheard Daniel and Sophia in the hallway. They weren't discussing my health or your well-being. They were calculating the value of our house, discussing which assisted living facilities would be most cost-effective for you." Daniel said, "Once Mom dies, we need to get Dad somewhere safe before he makes any financial mistakes. The house alone is worth $800,000. Sophia added that you'd be much happier in managed care, where you wouldn't have to worry about maintaining property. I realized our son sees you not as his father, but as a problem to be solved, an inconvenience standing between him and what he considers his inheritance." My hands clenched around the letter. This explained Daniel's recent behavior, his sudden interest in my well-being, his suggestions that the house was too much for me. He'd been laying groundwork, preparing to move me aside like an obstacle. "The foundation is legally bulletproof," Eleanor continued. "I worked with the best estate attorneys in Portland. Everything we own is now held in trust, with you as sole trustee for life. They can't touch it, can't force you to sell it, can't have you declared incompetent to manage it. You have complete control. But William, they will try. They will claim you're not capable of making decisions. They will bring lawyers and doctors and try to prove you need their help. When that happens, remember, you are not alone. The foundation has resources, legal protection, and people who believe in what we've created. Don't let them erase you, my love. Don't let them turn you into a problem that needs solving. You are a man with purpose, with value, with stories still to tell. Fight for that." I folded the letter carefully, vision blurred with unexpected tears. Eleanor hadn't just protected our assets. She'd protected my dignity, my autonomy, my right to remain myself instead of becoming their version of a manageable old man. The farmhouse felt different now, not just beautiful, but sacred. This wasn't simply a writer's retreat. It was a fortress, built by a woman who loved me enough to prepare for battles I didn't know were coming. As I locked the door and walked to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Eleanor's death: strength. Not just the strength of grief, but the strength that comes from being truly seen and protected. Daniel and Sophia thought they were dealing with a confused old man. They had no idea they were about to encounter the full force of Eleanor's strategic mind, still protecting me from beyond the grave. The drive home felt different. I wasn't returning as the broken widower who'd left that morning. I was returning as a man with resources, with purpose, with a fight worth winning. The next morning I called the law firm, whose business card I'd found in Eleanor's portfolio. Morrison, Chang, and Associates specialized in estate planning and asset protection. When I mentioned Eleanor's name, the receptionist immediately transferred me to Robert Morrison himself. "Mr. Carter," he said, his voice warm with recognition. "Eleanor spoke of you often. I've been expecting your call, though I hoped it would be under different circumstances. When can you come in?" An hour later, I sat across from Morrison in his downtown Portland office. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 50, with the kind of sharp intelligence that Eleanor would have trusted. On his desk was a thick file labeled Carter Family Trust. "Your wife was one of the most thorough clients I've ever worked with," Morrison began. "She anticipated every possible challenge to what you're about to face. Let me walk you through what she built." He opened the file, revealing documents I was only beginning to understand. The Carter Literary Foundation is what we call an irrevocable charitable remainder trust. Your house, your savings, your investments, even the farmhouse, everything is now owned by the foundation. You are the sole trustee with complete decision-making authority for your lifetime. "What does that mean practically?" I asked. "It means no one can force you to sell, move, or change anything without your explicit consent. Even if someone tried to have you declared incompetent, they would need to prove not just that you can't make personal decisions, but that you can't fulfill your duties as trustee. That's an extraordinarily high legal bar." Morrison pulled out another document. Eleanor also established what's called a poison pill provision. If anyone challenges your competency or tries to remove you as trustee, the foundation automatically transfers all assets to the National Writers Foundation. Your son would get nothing. I leaned back in my chair, amazed. She really thought of everything. She did. She also left specific instructions about what to do if Daniel or Sophia approach you with legal documents, offers to help manage your affairs, or suggestions about assisted living. "We have a response protocol ready." Morrison handed me a business card. This is my direct line. If they make any move at all, you call me immediately. Eleanor paid a substantial retainer to ensure you'd have immediate legal representation. How substantial? Enough to fight whatever they throw at you for years, if necessary. She was very concerned about their intentions. I thought about the conversation Eleanor had overheard in the hospital. She had good reason to be. There's one more thing, Morrison said, pulling out a sealed envelope. Eleanor left this for you to read after we met. She said it would help you understand the final piece of her plan. I took the envelope, feeling its familiar weight. Even in death, Eleanor was still guiding me, still protecting me, still one step ahead of dangers I couldn't see coming. Mr. Carter, Morrison said as I stood to leave, your wife built you a fortress, not just financially, but legally and emotionally. Use it. Don't let anyone convince you that you're too old, too confused, or too much trouble. You have resources now, and more importantly, you have purpose. Walking out of that office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Confidence. Not the false bravado of denial, but the quiet strength that comes from being prepared. Eleanor had given me more than protection. She'd given me the tools to fight back, and something told me I was going to need them sooner than I thought. 3 days later, Daniel's silver BMW pulled into my driveway. I watched from the living room window as he and Sophia sat in the car for several minutes, apparently discussing strategy. When they finally emerged, their faces wore practiced expressions of concern. I opened the door before they could knock. "Dad," Daniel said, his smile too bright. "We were in the neighborhood and thought we'd stop by, see how you're doing." "Since Christmas," Sophia added sweetly. "We've been worried about you." They'd never been in the neighborhood before. Our house was 20 minutes from their suburb, down roads that led nowhere else. But I played along. "Come in. I was just making coffee." In the kitchen, I watched them survey the space with calculating eyes. Sophia's gaze lingered on the crown molding, the hardwood floors. Daniel examined the appliances, probably estimating values. "The house looks good," Daniel said, settling at the table. "But it's so big for just one person. Don't you find it overwhelming?" "Overwhelming how?" "The maintenance, utilities, yard work," Sophia jumped in. "It must be exhausting at your age." "At your age." As if 71 meant incompetence. "I manage fine. But for how long?" Daniel leaned forward, his lawyer voice emerging. "What happens when you can't handle the stairs? Or if you have a medical emergency with no one around?" They'd rehearsed this. Each concern reasonable on the surface. Each question designed to plant doubt about my capability. "We've been thinking," Sophia said, patting my hand with false affection. "There are wonderful senior communities in Portland. Beautiful places with activities, medical staff, no maintenance worries." "Assisted living," I said flatly. "Independent living," Daniel corrected quickly. "Just with more support." "And this house?" They exchanged a glance. "It would make sense to sell," Daniel said carefully. "Use the equity for your care, set aside something for future needs." "The market is excellent," Sophia added. "A house like this could bring 800,000, maybe more." 800,000. The exact figure Eleanor had overheard them discussing. They'd done their homework, probably had it appraised while I was grieving. "I see. And you'd handle the sale?" "Of course," Daniel said, relief in his voice. "We'd handle everything. Find the right facility, manage the transition, deal with paperwork. You wouldn't have to worry about anything." "Wouldn't worry because I wouldn't control anything." They were offering to manage my entire life, reduce me to a passenger in my own existence. "That's thoughtful," I said. "But I'm not interested." The temperature dropped. "Dad," Daniel's voice carried a new edge, "you need to be practical. You're not getting younger, and this house is becoming a burden whether you admit it or not." "A burden to whom?" "To you," Sophia said quickly. "We can see how tired you look, how much effort everything takes." "From your one visit since Eleanor's funeral?" Daniel's mask slipped. "We've been busy. Work, travel. But we're here now, trying to help." "Help by convincing me to sell my home and let others make my decisions?" "By helping you make smart choices while you still can," Daniel shot back, then looked like he regretted it. Silence. "While you still can." There it was, the real message. The assumption that my competence was temporary, my independence already slipping. I set down my coffee cup with deliberate care. "I think this conversation is over." "Dad, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. You're asking me to give up everything I've built, Everything Eleanor and I created together, because you think I'm too old to manage my own life. We're trying to protect you, Sophia said. From what? From living in my own home? From making my own decisions? The masks were slipping now, their frustration showing through the fake concern. Daniel stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is ridiculous. You're being a stubborn old fool. Excuse me? You heard me. His voice turned ugly, all pretense gone. You're a stubborn, selfish old man who can't accept that he's past his prime. I stared at my son, hardly recognizing him. Daniel, watch your tone. Or what? He laughed harshly. What are you going to do, Dad? Ground me? I'm 45 years old, and I'm tired of pretending you're still capable of making rational decisions. Sophia nodded approvingly. He's right, William. You're living in a fantasy world. The only fantasy here is thinking you two actually care about my well-being. Daniel's face twisted with anger. Care about you? Do you have any idea what a pain in the ass you've become? Every phone call is some pathetic cry for attention. Every conversation is you whining about being lonely. The cruelty in his voice took my breath away. I never. Shut up. Daniel cut me off with a vicious tone I'd never heard before. Just shut up and listen for once in your miserable life. You're a burden, Dad. A useless, pathetic burden that nobody wants to deal with. Daniel! I gasped. What? You want the truth? Here's the truth. You're embarrassing. You're needy. You're too stupid to realize that nobody gives a damn about your feelings or your precious memories of Mom. Each word hit like a physical blow. This wasn't my son speaking. This was a stranger wearing Daniel's face, spewing poison I never imagined he was capable of. You're disgusting, Sophia added, her voice dripping with contempt. Clinging to a dead woman, living in this museum of a house like some pathetic old hermit. Get out, I whispered. We'll leave when we're damn well ready, Daniel snarled, and we'll be back with lawyers and doctors who'll prove what we already know. You're a senile old fool who can't be trusted with a checkbook, let alone a house worth $800,000. You bastard. The word slipped out before I could stop it. Daniel's eyes lit up with malicious glee. There it is, the real you, not the sweet, grieving widower act, just a nasty old man who thinks the world owes him something. I raised you. I loved you. I gave you everything. And now it's time to pay me back, Daniel said coldly. With interest. You owe me, old man. You owe me for every soccer game you missed, every time you chose work over family, every disappointment you handed me. I was a good father. You were adequate at best, he spat. And now you're nothing but a problem that needs solving. A decrepit old fool who's too arrogant to admit he's finished. I felt something break inside my chest. Not my heart, but something deeper. The last thread connecting me to the boy I'd once loved. Get out of my house, I said quietly. It won't be your house much longer, Daniel sneered. When we're done with you, you'll be lucky if they let you keep your pajamas in whatever nursing home we dump you in. Get out! I roared, my voice shaking the windows. Daniel smiled, a cold, satisfied expression. Look at that. The old fool still has some fight left. Don't worry, Dad. We'll beat that out of you soon enough. They walked toward the door, Sophia laughing at something Daniel whispered. At the threshold, my son turned back one final time. Enjoy your little tantrum, you pathetic piece of shit. It's the last bit of control you'll ever have. The door slammed behind them, leaving me alone with the echo of words I never thought I'd hear from my own child. I stood in the sudden silence, my whole body trembling. The boy I'd raised, the man I'd been proud of, had just revealed himself to be a monster. Cruel, greedy, and completely without conscience. But underneath the devastating pain, I felt something else growing. Cold, hard determination. If Daniel wanted a war, he'd just declared one. And thanks to Eleanor, I was better armed than he knew. After they left, I sat in Eleanor's chair for exactly 10 minutes, allowing myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. My son had called me a pathetic piece of shit. My daughter-in-law had called me disgusting. They'd threatened to put me in a nursing home and take everything Eleanor and I had built. Then I stood up, walked to Eleanor's study, and opened the final envelope Morrison had given me. Eleanor's last letter was brief. William, if you're reading this, then Daniel has shown his true colors. Don't grieve for the son you thought you had. Fight for the man you still are. The weapons are all in place. Use them. I called Morrison immediately. They just left, I told him. Daniel threatened to have me declared incompetent and put in a nursing home. He called me a pathetic piece of shit. I'm sorry, William, but I'm not surprised. Eleanor predicted this almost exactly. Are you ready to fight back? What do you mean? Eleanor left specific instructions for this scenario. We're going to document everything. I need you to write down every word you remember from today's conversation, word for word. Then we're going to start building your defense before they can mount their attack. I spent the next 2 hours writing down every cruel word, every threat, every moment of Daniel's transformation from concerned son to vicious predator. My hand shook as I recorded his language, but I didn't stop until I'd captured every detail. Morrison arrived that evening with a digital recorder and a strategy. From now on, every interaction with Daniel or Sophia gets recorded, he said. Oregon is a one-party consent state, which means you can record any conversation you're part of without telling them. We're going to document their harassment, their threats, their attempts to manipulate you. He handed me a small device that looked like a pen. Keep this with you always. If they show up unannounced, hit the button. If they call, record it. We're building a case that will destroy any attempt to claim you're incompetent. What else? We're scheduling you for a complete medical and psychological evaluation with the best geriatrician in Portland. We'll have documentation that you're sharp, healthy, and fully capable. We're also going to have character witnesses ready, people who can testify to your competence and independence. I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, purpose. Not the gentle purpose of grief or memory, but the sharp, focused purpose of war. There's one more thing, Morrison said. Eleanor anticipated they might try to access your medical records, claim you have dementia or some other condition. She had me arrange for an independent medical advocate. No one can access your health information without going through our legal team first. As Morrison packed up his files, I realized Eleanor hadn't just protected my assets. She'd protected my dignity, my autonomy, my right to remain myself. Every weapon I needed was already in place, waiting for me to pick it up. Daniel thought he was dealing with a broken-down old man. He had no idea he'd just declared war on a fortress built by the smartest woman I'd ever known. Let him come. I was ready. The next morning, I began building my defense with methodical precision. First stop, Dr. Patricia Hayes, the geriatrician Morrison recommended. After 2 hours of cognitive tests and examinations, Dr. Hayes smiled. Mr. Carter, you're sharper than most people half your age. Your memory is excellent, reasoning skills intact, judgment sound. I'll prepare a comprehensive report documenting your complete cognitive function. My longtime physician, Dr. Chen, was equally supportive. Incompetent? William, you just scheduled this appointment yourself and drove here without problems. You're managing medications, household, and finances perfectly well. I'll testify to that without hesitation. I spent the afternoon visiting neighbors and university colleagues. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Shock at Daniel's behavior, outrage at the accusations, immediate offers to help. Margaret Thompson, our neighbor for 20 years, was indignant. Incompetent? You helped me with my tax software last month. You've been maintaining everything perfectly since Eleanor passed. I'll write letters, make calls, or stand on my head in court if it helps. Professor Mitchell from the English department agreed. William, you've been auditing my Victorian literature course. Your Dickens analysis last week was brilliant. Anyone claiming you're mentally incompetent hasn't been paying attention. By evening, I had commitments from 8 people willing to provide statements or testimony. Morrison reviewed the growing file with satisfaction. Excellent. Medical documentation, character witnesses, evidence of daily functioning. But there's something else Eleanor arranged. He pulled out another folder. She hired a private investigator to document Daniel and Sophia's finances. The records were damning. Credit cards maxed out, second mortgage, questionable investment losses. They owed nearly $300,000. So this isn't about my well-being, I said. It's about $800,000 in real estate equity, plus other assets they assume you have. Eleanor suspected their true motivations and documented everything. No wonder they'd been so interested in my house value, so eager to help me simplify my life. Eleanor also anticipated they might try involuntary commitment, claiming you're dangerous to yourself. She arranged for psychiatric evaluation if needed. Dr. Sarah Klein, one of Oregon's most respected psychiatrists. As Morrison packed his files, I felt Eleanor's protection settling around me like armor. She'd anticipated every move, prepared every defense, armed me for a battle I hadn't known was coming. When will they make their move? Morrison checked his calendar. Soon. People this desperate don't wait long. 2 weeks, maybe less. I thought about Daniel's parting words, his cold promise to destroy me. Let him try. I had medical evidence of my competence. 8 witnesses ready to testify, documentation of his financial desperation, and legal protection Eleanor had spent 2 years constructing. For the first time since that terrible confrontation in my kitchen, I felt something approaching confidence. Not the false bravado of denial, but the quiet strength that comes from being prepared. Daniel wanted to paint me as a confused old man who couldn't manage his own life. Instead, he was about to discover he'd picked a fight with someone who had resources he couldn't imagine and allies he'd never see coming. Morrison's prediction was off by exactly 3 days. On a gray Tuesday morning, 11 days after Daniel's vicious outburst, a process server appeared at my door with an official envelope bearing the Multnomah County Circuit Court seal. William Carter? Yes. You've been served. He handed me the thick packet and walked away. I closed the door and opened the envelope with trembling fingers. The first document hit me like a physical blow. Petition for appointment of guardian and conservator for William James Carter, an allegedly incapacitated person. Allegedly incapacitated. My own son had filed papers declaring me mentally incompetent. I sank into Eleanor's chair and forced myself to read every word. Daniel and Sophia had painted a devastating picture of a confused old man in rapid decline. They claimed I'd been forgetting to pay bills, leaving the stove on, getting lost while driving, showing signs of significant cognitive deterioration since Eleanor's death. The lies were breathtaking. According to their petition, I'd been found wandering confused in the grocery store, had given inappropriate responses to simple questions, and been unable to manage basic household tasks. They'd even claimed I'd been talking to Eleanor as if she were still alive, having extended conversations with deceased spouse. Each fabrication was crafted to sound plausible, the kind of decline-worried adult children might genuinely observe. But they were lies, every single one. The petition requested Daniel be appointed as my guardian with full authority over my person, and Sophia be named conservator with complete control over my finances and property. They wanted legal permission to make every decision about my life, from where I lived to how my money was spent. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks away. I called Morrison immediately. They moved faster than I expected, he said after I read him portions. This is full-scale assault, William. They're not asking for limited guardianship. They want complete control. Can they win? Not with what we've prepared. But this shows their desperation. Filing false allegations in guardianship petitions is serious business. They're risking perjury charges, which we can prove. Absolutely. Every medical exam, witness statement, piece of evidence directly contradicts their claims. But William, this will be brutal. They'll put you on trial, question your competence in open court, try to humiliate you into submission. I thought about Daniel's cruel words, his cold promise to destroy me. Let them try. There's something else. The petition includes emergency temporary guardianship, claiming you're in immediate danger of financial exploitation or self-harm. If the judge grants that, they could remove you from your home within days. My blood ran cold. Can they do that? They can try. But we're filing our response tomorrow with every piece of evidence we've collected. Medical reports, witness statements, financial records showing their debt, documentation of their threats. We're turning their ambush into their destruction. After Morrison hung up, I sat holding the petition, reading their lies again. Daniel hadn't just attacked my competence. He'd attacked my character, my dignity, my right to exist as an independent human being. But as I read their fabrications, I felt something unexpected, relief. The pretense was finally over. No more fake concern, no more manipulation disguised as help. This was open warfare, and I preferred honest enemies to false friends. Eleanor had seen this coming and armed me for exactly this battle. The fortress she'd built was about to face its ultimate test. The next morning, Morrison arrived with files and determination that matched my own. 2 weeks to destroy their case, he said, spreading documents across my dining table. Here's our strategy. He laid out our response like a military campaign. First, comprehensive counterpetition documenting every lie in their allegations. Second, we're requesting court-ordered psychological evaluations for both you and Daniel. Why Daniel? Anyone filing false allegations this extensive either believes them, suggesting poor judgment, or knows they're lying, suggesting malicious intent. Either way, it questions his fitness as anyone's guardian. Morrison pulled out a thick folder. Your medical evaluations are perfect. Dr. Hayes wrote 6 pages documenting your cognitive function. Dr. Chen provided 15 years of history showing no decline. Dr. Klein's psychiatric evaluation concluded you're mentally sound with normal grief responses. 3 independent doctors had confirmed what I knew. I was completely competent. Now, witnesses. Professor Mitchell will testify about your intellectual engagement. Margaret Thompson will describe your daily functioning. 8 character witnesses total, all willing to testify under oath. Morrison coached me on courtroom procedure and staying calm under hostile cross-examination. Daniel's lawyer will try to rattle you. They'll ask about Eleanor, your grief, moments of confusion. Everyone has those. Stay composed and honest. Margaret stopped by with casserole and support. The whole neighborhood is disgusted by what Daniel's doing. Half the book club wants to march into that courtroom and give him hell. Professor Mitchell called with similar sentiments. I've seen real cognitive decline in colleagues, William. What you're experiencing is normal aging, not incompetence. I'll make that clear to any judge. 3 days before the hearing, Morrison delivered crucial news. I investigated Daniel's lawyer. He specializes in predatory guardianship cases, families targeting elderly relatives for assets. He's been sanctioned twice by the state bar for questionable practices. What does that mean? The judge will be skeptical from the start. Judges know this lawyer's reputation. They also know legitimate guardianship cases don't usually involve debt-ridden families trying to control substantial assets. The night before the hearing, I sat in Eleanor's study, surrounded by evidence of our 43 years together. Her books, photographs, careful handwriting on notes she'd never expected me to need. I hope you can see this, I said to her picture. I hope you know everything you built is about to be tested. The house felt expectant that night, as if Eleanor herself was waiting to see whether her fortress could withstand our son's assault. I went to bed early, alarm set for 6 a.m. Tomorrow, I would walk into that courtroom, not as the confused old man Daniel wanted me to be, but as William Carter, professor, widower, and a man armed with every legal weapon Eleanor's love could provide. The battle for my freedom was about to begin. The Multnomah County Courthouse felt like a cathedral of justice as I walked through its marble halls with Morrison at my side. Courtroom 4B was smaller than I'd expected, but the weight of what would happen there made it feel immense. Daniel and Sophia sat at the petitioner's table with their lawyer, Richard Blackwood, a thin man with predatory eyes who didn't bother to acknowledge us. Daniel avoided my gaze entirely while Sophia stared at me with undisguised contempt. Judge Patricia Reynolds entered, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd heard every lie the legal system had to offer. She reviewed the files briefly before calling the hearing to order. This is a petition for guardianship and conservatorship, she announced. Mr. Blackwood, present your case. Blackwood rose with theatrical confidence. Your Honor, we're here because William Carter, age 71, has experienced significant cognitive decline since his wife's death. His son Daniel and daughter-in-law Sophia have observed alarming changes in his behavior and decision-making capacity. He painted a picture of a confused old man spiraling into incompetence. Mr. Carter has been found wandering, disoriented in public places. He's been having extended conversations with his deceased wife. He's shown inability to manage basic household tasks and has made concerning financial decisions. I watched Daniel nod along with each fabrication, my own son supporting lies designed to strip away my freedom. The betrayal cut deeper in this formal setting, witnessed by strangers who would decide my fate based on these manufactured stories. Most concerning, Blackwood continued, Mr. Carter has become hostile and paranoid when family members express legitimate concerns about his welfare. He's accused his loving son of trying to steal from him and has made threats against family members who only want to help. Daniel was called to testify first. He took the stand with the confidence of a man who'd rehearsed his performance. It's been heartbreaking to watch Dad's decline, he said, his voice perfectly modulated for sympathy. Since Mom died, he's become a different person, confused, angry, suspicious of everyone who cares about him. He described fictional incidents with devastating detail. Finding me talking to empty chairs, believing Mom was still alive, discovering unpaid bills scattered everywhere and spoiled food left out for days. Each lie was delivered with the practiced sincerity of a skilled attorney. The final straw was when he accused Sophia and me of trying to steal his house, Daniel continued. He became verbally abusive, used profanity, and ordered us out. It was clear he'd lost touch with reality. I wanted to stand up and shout the truth, but Morrison's hand on my arm kept me seated. This was their moment to lie. Ours would come. Sophia took the stand next, adding her own fabrications. William has become increasingly paranoid and hostile. He's accused us of plotting against him, which breaks our hearts. We only want him safe and cared for. Judge Reynolds listened impassively, occasionally making notes. I couldn't read her expression, couldn't tell if she believed their performance or saw through it. Your Honor, Blackwood concluded, Daniel and Sophia Carter are prepared to take on the difficult responsibility of caring for William Carter. They ask only for the legal authority to ensure his safety and preserve his assets for his own benefit. The lies hung in the courtroom air like poison. My own son had just testified under oath that I was mentally incompetent, paranoid, and dangerous. He'd painted himself as a loving son, trying to save his father from his own deteriorating mind. Now it was our turn to reveal the truth. Morrison rose with the quiet confidence of a man holding all the winning cards. Your Honor, everything you've just heard is a carefully constructed lie designed to steal an elderly man's freedom and assets. We will prove that William Carter is not only competent, but that this petition is a fraudulent attempt by debt-ridden family members to access his substantial estate. He began methodically dismantling their case. Mr. Carter has never been found wandering confused anywhere. He drives safely, manages his finances independently, and maintains his home without assistance. 3 independent medical evaluations confirm he has no cognitive impairment whatsoever. Morrison presented Dr. Hayes's report first. Dr. Patricia Hayes, one of Oregon's leading geriatricians, conducted comprehensive cognitive testing. Her conclusion: Mr. Carter's mental function is superior to most people his age. Dr. Chen's 15-year medical history followed, showing no signs of dementia or decline. Dr. Klein's psychiatric evaluation confirmed normal grief responses with no mental illness. As for the alleged unpaid bills and financial mismanagement, Morrison continued, producing bank statements, Mr. Carter's finances are impeccably organized. Every bill paid on time, every transaction recorded, every investment properly managed. Then came the witnesses. Professor Mitchell testified about my sharp participation in his literature course. Mr. Carter's analysis of Victorian novels demonstrates sophisticated critical thinking. His questions are insightful, his observations profound. This is not a man experiencing cognitive decline. Margaret Thompson described my daily functioning with fierce loyalty. William maintains his yard, helps neighbors with computer problems, and manages his household perfectly. The idea that he's incompetent is ridiculous. One by one, 8 community members testified to my competence, independence, and sharp mental faculties. Their combined testimony painted a picture completely opposite to Daniel's lies. But Morrison's masterstroke came next. Your Honor, we must address the petitioner's true motivation. He presented Daniel and Sophia's financial records. The petitioners owe nearly $300,000 in credit card debt, have a second mortgage, and face potential bankruptcy. They need money desperately. Judge Reynolds leaned forward, clearly interested. Furthermore, Morrison continued, we have audio recordings of conversations between Mr. Carter and the petitioners. He played excerpts from my pen recorder, Daniel's voice filling the courtroom with vicious clarity. You're pathetic, Dad. A useless, pathetic burden that nobody wants to deal with. You're disgusting, clinging to a dead woman like some pathetic old hermit. You're a decrepit old fool who's too arrogant to admit he's finished. The courtroom fell silent. Daniel's face went white as his own words condemned him. Sophia stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. These are not the words of loving children concerned for their father's welfare, Morrison said quietly. These are the words of predators targeting an elderly man's assets. Finally, Morrison called me to testify. I walked to the witness stand on steady legs, my voice clear and strong as I answered every question. I recited my daily routine, my financial management system, my social activities. I explained my grief for Eleanor without shame, my independence without apology. Under cross-examination, Blackwood tried to rattle me, but his questions only highlighted my competence. When he asked about my conversations with my deceased wife, I answered simply, "I talk to her picture sometimes, the way people talk to photographs of loved ones. It's called grief, not mental illness." Judge Reynolds deliberated for exactly 12 minutes. "Having reviewed all evidence and testimony," she announced, "I find no basis whatsoever for guardianship or conservatorship, Mr. Nounce. William Carter is clearly competent, independent, and fully capable of managing his affairs." She turned toward Daniel and Sophia with obvious disgust. "Furthermore, I find the allegations in this petition to be not only unfounded but potentially fraudulent. The court strongly condemns the attempt to exploit guardianship laws for financial gain." The gavel came down with finality. Petition denied in its entirety. I had won. Completely, decisively, overwhelmingly. Eleanor's fortress had not only withstood the assault, it had destroyed the attackers. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt complete freedom for the first time since Eleanor's death. Not just legal freedom from Daniel's attack, but emotional freedom from months of guilt and confusion. Morrison shook my hand on the courthouse steps. "Eleanor would be proud. You fought for everything she believed in." Over the following weeks, I threw myself into developing the writer's retreat with renewed energy. Eleanor's vision became my mission. I hired contractors to add writing spaces, installed better lighting, and created a library for writers over 50. The first official retreat began 3 months later. 12 writers arrived carrying stories they'd thought were too late to tell. Margaret, a retired nurse, brought Vietnam memoirs. James, a former engineer, carried decades of secret poems. Sarah, a widow, had been working on a novel about second chances. I watched them settle into Eleanor's designed spaces, their faces lighting up as they realized this sanctuary was truly theirs. No family obligations, no judgment about age or relevance. "This is exactly what Eleanor envisioned," I told them during our first dinner. "A place where experience becomes literature, where wisdom finds its voice." The retreat succeeded beyond expectations. Writers came from across the Pacific Northwest, drawn by word of mouth and the Carter Literary Foundation's growing reputation. I found myself not just managing the facility but mentoring writers, helping shape their stories. For the first time since Eleanor's death, I had purpose beyond grief. I was building something meaningful that would outlast me and continue helping others. My Salem house remained home but no longer felt like a museum. I kept Eleanor's things but made changes too. I converted her study into my writing space and began a memoir about our life together. I planted new flowers she'd never seen but would have loved. The neighborhood embraced my transformation. Margaret Thompson stopped by with coffee. Professor Mitchell invited me to guest lecture. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. 6 months after the court victory, Daniel's letter arrived. An apparent apology requesting to rebuild our relationship. I read it twice, then filed it away without responding. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. Some relationships, once poisoned, cannot be healed. Daniel had shown me who he really was when he thought I was helpless, and I chose to believe him. The writer's retreat taught me what Eleanor always knew. It's never too late to begin a new chapter, but you choose which characters deserve a place in it. I was 71, a widower, alone in terms of family. I was also free, purposeful, and surrounded by a community that valued what I offered. It was exactly the life Eleanor had prepared for me to live. 1 year after the court victory, Daniel appeared at my door unannounced. I saw him through the window, standing where Eleanor used to greet visitors with genuine warmth. He looked older, thinner, carrying himself with the defeated posture of a man who'd lost more than a legal battle. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Dad," he began, voice barely a whisper. "I know I don't deserve it, but I need to talk to you. We have nothing to discuss. Please. I've been in therapy. I understand now how wrong I was. You understand that calling your father a pathetic piece of shit was wrong? That trying to steal his home was terrible? How enlightened." His face crumpled. I was desperate. The debt, pressure from Sophia. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking perfectly clearly. You saw an opportunity to solve your problems by destroying me, and you took it. You only regret that it didn't work. That's not true. I regret everything. The things I said, how I treated you, the pain I caused. I want to make amends. I studied his face, searching for the boy I'd once loved. He was gone, replaced by this stranger who spoke of regret only after consequences. What amends could possibly repair what you destroyed? I don't know, but I want to try. You're my father. We're family. No, Daniel, we were family. Family doesn't try to have each other declared incompetent for money. Family doesn't call each other disgusting and pathetic. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. You meant every word. I believe you meant them because that's who you are when you think no one can stop you. He stepped closer, desperation in his voice. What about forgiveness? Second chances? Mom would have wanted... Don't... My voice turned ice cold. Don't invoke Eleanor's name. She saw what you were becoming and spent her final months protecting me from you. She knew you'd show your true colors when you thought I was vulnerable. Daniel's shoulders sagged. So that's it? You'll never forgive me? That's it. But I'm your son. You were my son. Now you're just a man who tried to destroy me and failed. The relationship you're mourning died in my kitchen the day you called me a pathetic piece of shit. I'm acknowledging what you already killed. I stepped back and began closing the door. Dad, please. Goodbye, Daniel. Don't come back. I closed and locked the door, then watched through the window as he stood on the porch for several minutes before walking away. I felt no sadness, no regret, no urge to call him back. That part of my heart had been cauterized by his cruelty. The writer's retreat was hosting its spring session, and I had work to do. Stories to nurture, voices to encourage, lives to enrich. Eleanor's legacy continued growing, touching people who deserved sanctuary and support. I was 72, alone by choice rather than circumstance, surrounded by purpose instead of family obligation. The sun was setting over Willamette Valley, painting the sky in shades of gold and peace. Some stories end with forgiveness and reconciliation. This one ended with boundaries and self-respect. Both can be forms of love. Love for the person you choose to become when others try to diminish who you are. I was exactly where Eleanor had always known I belonged. Free, dignified, and uncompromisingly myself. William's journey teaches us that dignity and boundaries are not negotiable, even with family. In betrayal stories like this, we learn that true love requires respect without it. Relationships become toxic. Eleanor's wisdom shows us that God gives us strength to prepare for battles we hope never to face, but love demands we prepare anyway. These betrayal stories resonate because they reflect our deepest fear. What happens when those closest to us reveal their true nature? William discovered that family isn't defined by blood, but by respect and genuine care. When Daniel chose greed over love, he forfeited his place in his father's life. The most powerful lesson is about boundaries. God doesn't require us to accept abuse in the name of forgiveness. William forgave Daniel in his heart while refusing further harm. This isn't cruelty, it's wisdom. Like the best grandpa stories, this tale shows that age brings not vulnerability, but clarity to recognize manipulation and strength to resist it. Eleanor armed William with legal protection and understanding that he deserved better. William's writer's retreat proves our greatest victories come from transforming pain into purpose. These grandpa stories remind us that wisdom earned through suffering becomes a gift to others walking similar paths. In the end, William chose peace over reconciliation, dignity over family obligation. Sometimes courage means walking away from those who refuse basic human decency. God honors our decision to protect the life He gave us, even when protection requires difficult choices. As these grandpa stories teach us, it's never too late to choose ourselves, demand respect, and build a life worthy of the love we've been given. True strength isn't enduring abuse, it's having the courage to say no more. What lessons from William's story resonate with you? Have you faced similar choices between family loyalty and self-respect? Share your thoughts below. Your experience might encourage someone else. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that dignity is worth fighting for.